Hello Internet, I'm Skizzers, and today we're going to be going over my way to play Kael'Thas. I want to tell you guys a little bit about myself before we start the guide, just so you kind of know where my background comes from. I've been a theory crafter in Heroes of the Storm since week 1 of Alpha when I got in. Um, Being a theory crafter basically means that I come up with what I believe to be the optimal builds for heroes through different kind of testing, damage, utility, practicality, other factors like that. Usually consists of going into try mode and then right-clicking things and using all your abilities, adding up numbers, and then saying, okay, is this ability even practical in regular games? You go in regular games, you test them, etc. I also have over 2,500 hours in Dota 2, which is where my original experience for MOBA games comes from. So now let's get into the skills. We're going to go over his basic abilities, and then we'll get into talents and why I pick what I pick. First, we're going to go over his passive trait, Verdant Spheres. When you activate Verdant Spheres, it makes your next basic ability more powerful, and we'll get into more detail with each skill about what that actually does. Alright, so his Q is called Flame Strike. After a short delay, it's roughly around a second. Deal damage in an area, and if you activate Verdant Spheres, it increases the radius by 50% and then deals more damage on top of that. So it's a good way to clear minion waves if you don't think you're going to need Verdant Spheres for Living Bomb, which we'll go over next. Using Verdant Spheres into Flame Strike is always a good way for wave clear and also good for Merc Camp jungling. His W and his main skill that we'll be focusing on, Living Bomb, deal X amount of damage over 3 seconds to an enemy and then explode for more damage, dealing damage to all nearby enemies. The Verdant Sphere upgrade for Living Bomb makes it cost no mana and have no cooldown, which is huge because you can use Living Bomb to combo basically everything, and we'll go over combos in the video a little bit later, but that kind of gives you a rough understanding of how powerful this is. It is basically does all your damage for you. And his last basic ability we're going to be going over is Gravity Lapse, his E. And he basically throws out a small tornado, and it stuns the first enemy it hits for 1.5 seconds. And if you activate Verdant Spheres with it, it'll stun the first 3 enemies it hits. So usually the only time you activate it with Verdant Spheres is if you're going to be running away from the enemy team, and you need to stun more than one person. So you'll throw it out and stun 3 people, and can get away a lot easier. Alright, so we load up into the game. You're level 1. What talent do you pick? Usually it's between Mana Addict and Convection. And Convection's good early game. It helps you secure some more kills, doing the extra 20% bonus damage to enemies who are stunned by Gravity Lapse. But in the late game, you end up only gaining about 300 to 400 damage off of it, and you end up having so much less mana, you're super mana starved, and you can't cast anything or stay in a fight very long. So that's why I pick up Mana Addict at level 1, which when you grab a regen orb, your maximum mana pool is increased by 15. And just picking up 1 is already huge for Kael'Thas. So picking up multiple just allows you to stay in fights longer, and since your mana pool is bigger, you're able to cast more spells and help out your team more, as well as doing more damage yourself. Level 4, usually I see people either picking up Gathering Power or Envenom, both really good skills, but in terms of what we're trying to do with Kael'Thas, we're trying to make sure our combo sets up well, so we deal a lot of damage as an assassin and are able to help out our team. So level 4, always pick up Netherwind for the increased range and Gravity Lapse, as well as speed by 30%. Now, the range is nice for long picks, for stunning and allowing your team to catch up, but the speed is really what's important, because with the extra speed you get from Netherwind, you're almost guaranteed to stun every time, where if you don't pick up Netherwind, it's much easier for a player that's aware of your casting to dodge it. Not saying it is easy to dodge another one regardless, but with the speed increase, it's almost a guaranteed stun. So we always pick up Netherwind. Just that pure speed just helps you set up combos so easily, and it ends up helping your team out more because you're always hitting your stuns. So they can, in turn, also do more damage or stack their stuns on top of yours, etc. Level 7 is always a really easy choice. We always go with Fission Bomb because of the bonuses that it gives Living Bomb, and it's just an increase in DPS, and as an assassin, that's what you're going to be looking for. Now, level 10 is a bit of a toss-up. It really depends on what map you're playing, the situation, and what your enemies tend to be doing more often. So Kael'Thas' first ultimate is Phoenix, which you launch a big old firebird into the battlefield, and he's got a big old circle around him, and he does single target DPS with slight splash damage to random enemies who walk through it. Phoenix is really good for area denial, meaning if you're playing, say, Cursed Hollows, and you need to grab the tribute, you can cast Phoenix on top of it, and that'll either delay the enemy from picking it up because Phoenix is going to be attacking them constantly, or you can deny an area in where you cast Phoenix maybe off to the side or like a flank position or something where to get to you guys they have to walk through it, and most players won't ever walk through it, so you kind of have some area denial. It's also really good for jungling bruisers, aka knights, solo. Since Phoenix is on such a low cooldown at 40 seconds, you're usually able to cast Phoenix at the start of jungling a bruiser camp, clearing it, and by the time you're leaving the bruiser camp, you're roughly around 20 seconds, or a little over 20 seconds, 25, something like that. And you'll always have Phoenix the next time you're going to go team fight, allowing you to jungle by yourself doing merc camps like that is pretty huge. Siege camps you don't really need to use Phoenix for, but you can use Phoenix in bruiser camps to solo, which is always something people don't expect, where you have an assassin that just goes and solos it and comes out with a decent amount of health. So a quick overview then of what we've gone over for Phoenix. It helps you jungle, and it has area denial. It doesn't do a lot of damage, but if an enemy sits in there, they're going to be taking a pretty significant chunk of damage, but by itself it doesn't do a lot of damage. The other ultimate choice you have is Pyroblast. Pyroblast is on a 50-second cooldown, and after 2 seconds, you cast a really slow-moving Fireball of Doom that deals a lot of damage, and it deals half damage to any enemies that are around the target when hit. Now, Pyroblast is good for kill securing. It's good for open burst damage, meaning your tank's going to jump in, and you can coordinate with your tank. So you're casting Pyroblast, and your tank will jump in as soon as Pyroblast hits. That's an example of your open quote-unquote burst damage. It's also very good for utility purposes as far as providing vision. Now, it's a little hard to manage it this way, but Pyroblast doesn't always need to be that ulti that finishes a kill for you. It can secure a kill in a different way by providing vision for you. So when an enemy goes in the fog that you are casting Pyroblast on, you still track that enemy through fog. It doesn't matter that they've gone into fog. So let's use an example where your team is chasing after an enemy and you finished up this other part of the team fight and you're nowhere near them, but the enemy is still within your AoE circle. You can use Pyroblast to keep vision on an enemy that goes through fog for your team, and you can cancel it before the 2-second period, so you still have Pyroblast up for a different hero. Or if your team's not going to be able to kill them in those 2 seconds, you just let Fireball go, and even if it doesn't hit the target, it's tracking the target the whole time and providing vision of that target the whole time. So your team has a lot easier of a time tracking down where that enemy has gone through fog, can clean up the kill. So Pyroblast doesn't always need to hit the target, but it's nice for single target chase down, as well as just dealing a ton of damage. So with both those ultimates explained, they're very situational. I tend to go for Phoenix more often just because of the solo jungle potential. I'll pick up Pyroblast on a map like Garden Terror, where area denial isn't as important, and you tend to be with your team mostly anyway. So using Phoenix for jungle camps tends to not happen because you're with your team. But like I said, I usually pick Phoenix. It depends on the map. It also depends on the enemy team's play style. If they're very aggressive, sometimes having Phoenix is nice because you can quote unquote install fear in your enemy, and then they might not push through an area where they would have before without Phoenix. So level 13 is the big one for Kael'Thas. This is where you have your choice between Chain Bomb and Pyromaniac. In my build, we always go with Pyromaniac. So what Pyromaniac does is every tick of Living Bomb's damage, all the dots before it explodes, reduces your basic ability cooldowns by 2 seconds, which is going to let you just cast everything all the time, and this is why we grab it. Now, Chain Bomb is really good in situations where you can communicate with your team, or your team has a lot of area CC, like ETC's Mosh Pit, ulti for example. If you can grab 4 or 5 heroes, and you throw Living Bomb on them, and you have the Chain Bomb skill, it's going to do a ton of burst damage. And it's awesome because you end up doing all this crazy burst damage, but you're basically out of the fight until your cooldowns come back up. Pyromaniac is a little more single target oriented, allows you to be casting abilities all throughout a fight with roughly 1 to 2 second downtimes in between when cooldowns are still being reduced. It's a lot better than having to wait the extra time for your other abilities when you go Chain Bomb. So here I'm going to show you an example of Pyromaniac on this Uther. Please ignore my horrible miss on my first Gravity Lapse throw. It's a really good example of how Pyromaniac keeps you in the fight longer rather than being just an auto attack target. Pyromaniac also ends up helping your team more because you're able to get off more Gravity Lapses, meaning more stuns, meaning your team's more useful, and it's just not you trying to hit this big AoE damage and then you have to sit there and auto attack or just run away. I did a lot of hours of testing in try mode as well as playing real matches using both the typical Chain Bomb build and my Pyromaniac build, and my results show that Pyromaniac ends up doing more damage than Chain Bomb does over a 22-second period of time, as well as providing double the stuns for you and your team to take advantage of. Now, with that said, my results doesn't include like 5-man chain bombs, because if you hit a 5-man chain bomb, you're going to do way more damage than you would if you chose Pyromaniac. But hitting a 5-man chain bomb also requires the enemy to have bad positioning or for your team to have a lot of good CC, and because of that, Chain Bomb's damage is more of an unreliable source, where Pyromaniac's is a guaranteed source. So as long as you're able to click on things with Pyromaniac, you should be dealing out that amount of damage consistently, where with Chain Bomb, you kind of rely on bad positioning or your team's help to set up things. Now, Chain Bomb is still an awesome ability, and if I was in a 5-man stack going into Hero League, and if my team picked CC heroes like ETC, then I would go Chain Bomb because I would be relying on my team to set up these things, but I trust those players, and therefore I will have a lot more burst damage. But going into Quick Match or Hero League as a solo queue, a duo queue, a 3-stack, all of those, it's a lot harder to have good setups through Chain Bomb. Your team might not always be on point with you, figuring out when to use Chain Bomb, when not to use Chain Bomb. So Pyromaniac ends up being better in those situations because you can rely more on yourself to get the job done, and the amount of stuns you're going to have also will allow your team that may or may not be as on point as you are to also get their job done, and in turn you end up doing a lot more damage. So the TLDL, the too long didn't listen of this entire level 13, we pick up Pyromaniac because it ends up being better overall in the long run as far as damage goes. Though it is single target based, it ends up providing a lot more DPS for you and your team in the long run. That doesn't mean Chain Bomb isn't good. It just means it's a lot harder to land the optimal amount of damage when you're solo queuing or playing in a 3-stack, which means Pyromaniac is more reliable damage, and which is why we pick Pyromaniac as our level 13 talent. Now, level 16 kind of works like how level 13 did with Fury of the Sunwell and Backdraft. In this build, we always go Backdraft because the slow is just too good to pass up. It helps you and your team do a ton more damage, and the slow also sets up really easy Gravity Lapses. And since you're going to have Living Bomb off cooldown 95% of the time, because you pick Pyromaniac, you're going to constantly be able to slow the enemy, which ends up helping you deal more DPS and helps your team do what they need to do, helping you take down enemies. Fury of the Sunwell, in my opinion, works like Chain Bomb, where it's really awesome if the team helps you out and if your team has a lot of CC that can keep them in place for a long time, or the enemy team has bad positioning. In my tests, it's really difficult to set up Fury of the Sunwell by yourself. You can cast your Q first, throw your Gravity Lapse so the first one goes off, and then hopefully they stay there or try to fight you for the second one to go off. It's really good for wave clear, but you're able to wave clear really quickly at level 16 with Backdraft, Pyromaniac, and just using Verdant Spheres on your Flame Strike. Anyway, so Fury of the Sunwell, not as useful as I would like it to be, but it is a very good trait. Also paired with Chain Bomb, you can do a ton of damage if you have the right team comp and the right situations happen at the right times for you. At level 20, we have a really easy choice, being Bolt of the Storm. The ability to blink in MOBAs and having that much mobility is massive. It's the best skill in the game. That's why they moved it to level 20, gave it a 70-second cooldown. Now, with that said, the 70-second cooldown is something to be aware of. I tend to always save my blink for defensive purposes, but that doesn't mean you can't use it offensively sometimes. I'll use it offensively when we do our big end the game push, where we might wipe 3 to 4 heroes on their team, and there's 1 or 2 left, and I know if there's 2 left, I know where one of them is, so I can offensively blink and know I'm not going to die. Using blink offensively in situations where you're not sure where the enemy team is isn't always smart. Sometimes the gamble pays off and there's no other enemies near the one you're going after, but on a 70-second cooldown, it's not something you really want to risk. You also have to consider that Bolt of the Storm has a much longer cooldown than both of the ulti choices. Use blink with caution, but if you use it right, you're gonna score kills or get out of any bad fight situation. So that's it for my guide on how I play Kael'Thas. I hope you guys end up trying out the build, and I hope it works great for you. It's worked great for me, and I hope you all really enjoyed the guide. I like to mention that I live stream on Twitch TV every Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays from around 10:30 p.m. PST to around 1:30 p.m. PST. Once again, everyone, this is Skizzers with my guide to how I play Kael'Thas, and I'll see you on the battlefield.